Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here to share a little about Tyler, as well as some of the hard-learned lessons that we have acquired in the past 8+, almost 9 years. And I always like to preface this by saying that not all bullying incidences end in the tragic outcome that Tyler experienced. But with that said, all bullying incidences hurt and can usually leave lasting scars that last a lifetime. And what I like to do is make sure that people see the humanity in a situation. And that is why I'd like to introduce you to our family. This is our family in June of 2010. Much like many families, we enjoyed celebrating major occurrences. This is actually Tyler's graduation from high school. As with some people, everybody has differences. We like to point out differences and similarities. We are sharing in a monumental event, but of course there's no cap and gown, which is very unique to Ridgewood, where we live. In our little bubble that I lived in back in 2010, when everything seemed perfect and blissful, and I was oblivious to many of the big major issues that were happening in the world, sadly to say. This was a great event. It was a month after my middle son graduated from college, from Cornell, and I only mention that because that is why we are here today. There's a connection there. So we are like family because, you know, people are only one step away. And this past February, I was at the HRC dinner with James, or James's husband, Ramon, and we met a young man named Mike, one of your gigglers here, and came up to me and said, "Do you have a son, Brian?" And no one knows I have a son, Brian, but I do have a son, Brian. He's between myself and Tyler there. And I said, "Yes, how do you know him?" And Mike was Brian's RA at Cornell when Brian was a freshman. So you got him through those years, and I'm grateful for that. So thank you so much. And that makes us kind of family. And publicly, usually I only speak mostly about Tyler. And James and I started speaking together many years ago when we started the foundation, but he's become very busy, and he'll share his own story in a minute. And we haven't talked together, so this is going to be interesting to see how we finagle through these slides. But in 2010, as I said, we were just a very simple and very private family, not seeking attention in any way, shape, or form. And usually we speak mostly about my youngest son, Tyler, who, as you can see, had this warm, infectious smile that truly blessed our lives at the time. He had this great, easygoing personality that seemed to have a great sense of humor and loved to make us all smile as well. He was very curious, and he loved to share his curiosity. He loved to cycle. When he was young, of course, with like a bicycle. Then when he was like in 4th or 5th grade, he mastered the unicycle. Now that is not an easy trait. And if you notice, it's hard to see in that picture, but he's actually playing a violin while he's riding his unicycle, just to make things a little easier. And as he was graduating high school, I guess the year before, he became an avid cyclist, and he begged and borrowed and worked to save up for a really great bicycle that he cherished, and he took it on long trips. From our home in Ridgewood, he would ride up to Harriman State Park, which was about 26 miles. So when he set his mind to something, he was extremely determined. I do think that in our family, he was a little bit of a peacekeeper. James is the oldest, and Brian was the middle, right close to James in age, and Tyler was much younger, like 4 years younger than Brian. So I think they were a little kinder and gentler to Tyler. They each had similarities with Tyler, and they also had differences, but Tyler tended to be the peacekeeper between them. And that's where I'm going to segue and allow James to share a little bit about growing up with Tyler as well.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that, and happy Pride, happy New York Pride, and happy World Pride, everybody. So yeah, I think yeah, also as my mom mentioned, I was Tyler's older brother. I was 6 years older than him, and growing up, I just always felt very protective of him and very much wanting to take care of him, and really seeing this kind and sweet kid that I thought everyone else would see in him as well. And so I was very surprised and shocked that the world doesn't actually work that way, and different people bring different biases and different MOs with them as well. But I think, Tyler was just someone that I sort of always thought was going to be there in my life, and I think that's been kind of the toughest thing, is sort of realizing that those connections that you sort of maybe in some ways take for granted or just sort of assume you'll always have can so easily and permanently be taken away. But yeah, actually kind of going back to Tyler's high school graduation, so maybe a month or so after that, actually maybe a few weeks after that, Tyler and I actually came out to each other for the first time, which was a really surprising experience, because I had been wanting to tell him that I was gay for a long time and didn't expect that he would actually have the same information to share with me. And he seemed at that point to be much more comfortable, much more self-assured and confident with who he was at 18 than I had been at that same age. So I remember just feeling very excited for him to go to college, feeling like he was in really good hands, that he had a really good head on his shoulders, and that he knew also that he had a support system, right? Because I definitely understood that you may not at that age feel comfortable reaching out to your parents in all situations. But I thought as an older brother that I could be someone who he could reach out to if he potentially had a situation that he didn't want to go to you with, no offense to you. And so that, I think that was kind of my memory of that summer, those few months that we had before he went away to school, was feeling like he was about to have this new chapter of his life starting, and how many doors were going to open for him, and yeah. Sure, and also I feel like we're kind of jumping around a bit chronologically, but so a couple of things with this picture. So that's my husband Ramon in the pink tie standing next to me. We got married in 2015, and that's been a really great thing that's come into my life, is realizing through healing that I didn't have to be devastated and sad for the rest of my life. And even though this is something that I'll always carry with me, that there is healing that comes in different ways. And then also, that picture was taken last year. I was just graduating from Columbia University Teachers College with a master's in counseling psychology. So I think that's been another thing through my work with the foundation and sort of traveling the country, sharing my experience about losing my brother, was kind of also everywhere I went, hearing stories from other people and realizing that we've all been through things and we all carry trauma and grief and pain with us. And so it in no way makes our family unique, but it is a story that have been able to share. But for me, what I think I've really enjoyed is the connection with others who also want to talk. And I've discovered that I really like listening to other people and supporting them. So that's kind of the direction that I've gone in my work as a mental health counselor.
And I think we all have different identities. We're not just one identity, we share many identities. And this is one of Tyler's other identities. He was a very compassionate, very passionate, and very skilled violinist. He had many gifts and traits, but I do believe he was very gifted in performance. I am not just saying that as a proud mom. I do believe that. One story to back that thought up is that when he did start at Rutgers University, he did audition for the orchestra to get a seat, which is common. They do have two orchestras, though, at Rutgers. They have the undergraduate orchestra that everyone gets in. They just have to find their place by auditioning. And then they have the graduate school orchestra for mostly for graduate students that are majoring in music. And Tyler was one of two freshmen that got accepted into the graduate school music orchestra. I think two of the string players. But so he truly was gifted. But he was unknown in the world, except for our little corner of northern New Jersey, until the fall of 2010, when Tyler started his freshman year at Rutgers University, and his roommate live streamed him having a sexual encounter with another man. And then he posted about it on social media, tweeting about it and putting it on Facebook. And as Tyler continued to read those comments and those jokes, I do believe Tyler's reality became very twisted and distorted. And Tyler could no longer see how special and precious he was, but rather became very isolated and into a very dark place. And what breaks my heart is that I do believe Tyler's roommate did target him simply because of the God-given gift of Tyler's sexual orientation. It made Tyler different than his roommate, and Tyler's roommate used that difference to humiliate him in front of his new dorm mates. And as I said, as he continued to read those posts and comments and jokes, he couldn't see the resources that he had available to him, because Rutgers is a welcoming and safe place, but people don't become that way instantaneously upon arriving on the doorsteps of a job or a company or a college or a high school. It takes time to acclimate to that culture. And as Tyler's reality spiraled, he made a terrible mistake. He made a permanent decision to a temporary situation. And on September 22nd, 2010, Tyler died by suicide. He was only 18 years old. And as much as we would like to go back and change Tyler's actions, the reality is we can't. So what Joe and I did is we moved forward by starting the Tyler Clementi Foundation to make sure no one else would ever have to face the pain, shame, and humiliation that Tyler experienced. At first, we weren't sure exactly what we wanted to focus on, but we finally settled on bullying. So we want to put an end to all online and offline bullying in schools, workplaces, and faith communities. And one of the reasons why we decided to move forward, because we are not public people, and what did we know about bullying, and what did I know about LGBT people? Nothing. And rather than I have two precious sons. And what did I know about mental health issues? I really did not know much about any of those things, but we did have a lot of public attention. The media picked up Tyler's story. There were many cases of suicides that fall, and the media did pick up on all of them, but Tyler seemed to continually rise to the attention of the headlines. And we wanted to utilize that and add our voice to that. As we started to gain our voice and moving forward with the foundation, we learned more than we ever wanted to know about bullying. And you can be thankful that you're not high school or middle-aged schools that we go and talk to, because we would ask you to tell us what bullying is, because I'm sure most of you do know the definition, but the legal definition is one thing, which is unwanted aggressive behavior among school-aged children, usually based on a real or perceived power indifference. But I do believe that it's not just school-aged children. If we don't identify behavior and change that behavior, it's going to continue on into adulthood. I mean, Tyler's roommate and Tyler were 18, technically, magically adults, right? Not in my mind, but legally. So that is why it's key for us that we want to make sure that we can identify behaviors and we can change those behaviors, because I do believe that it is possible.
Absolutely. Just the next. Right, so we also kind of explore about different reasons why people are targeted, and I think the main thing across different types of bullying and different age ranges is difference. So people are targeted for being different in some way, and we do know that sexual orientation tends to be one of the biggest reasons why people are being bullied. Gender identity, body type, ability, race, religion, culture are all also reasons. And I think even in the last few years, in the current political climate, that we've seen a lot more bullying just kind of being acceptable, being condoned, becoming more mainstream, and just the sort of tone of the culture that we're in now is much more harsh and much more oppressive than it's been in my lifetime, certainly. So we definitely are seeing a rise in bias crimes, a rise in what we call bullying, but really outside of the school playground. I mean, words like harassment and abuse and mistreatment could more accurately describe a lot of the behaviors that we're going to be talking about.
Right. And it's not just kids being kids, and it's not a rite of passage. We have to stop the behavior. And as such, I do believe that all bullying instances are a mental health situation, and as that, both parties, the aggressor and the person being targeted, need mental health. They need resources. They need to learn how to change their behavior. They need mediation of how to problem solve with each other, because we need to be respectful. We can't all agree with everyone, but we need to learn how to have dialogue and how to show respect for everyone. because oftentimes it's hurt people who hurt other people, and that's what's something we have to remember. So we need to be sure to be able to give the people that are in a situation the resources that they need. So we need to identify that behavior.
Yes, so bullying has also changed a lot through the creation of social media, right? So when I was in high school, Facebook didn't even exist yet, social media didn't exist, and it was pretty much limited to these categories of sort of physical bullying, which is like hitting, shoving, spitting on someone, verbal bullying, right? Like using your language, calling someone words, and then social bullying, so spreading rumors about someone or not allowing someone to sit at your table in the cafeteria. That's sort of stuff that we've seen in movies and in sort of Hollywood depictions of what life looks like for young people. But today in 2019, and probably over the last 10 to 15 years, social media, the internet, sort of smartphones, everything, all the technology that we've developed has really been able to be used in ways to sort of continue that power imbalance that we're talking about. So,
as a tech company, you would probably know that better than even us, but we do need to remind people sometimes that the cyber digital world, which was created for good and keep people connected and to keep people communicating quickly, can also be weaponized against others for harm. And that's what we really want to try to work to do, and I'm sure there might even be a component of Google that's working on that as well, because there are many nuances with having that mean-spirited expression of words in the digital space that are so very different than in person. I mean, if you were being targeted in your classroom or on the playground, it would be, what, 20 people, 30 people, maybe 50 or 100 on the playground, possibly, or lunchroom. But in the digital cyber world, as you well know, it could be hundreds of people, thousands of people, maybe even millions if something, I suppose, goes viral. And the worst part is like, I don't know if Tyler even knew how many people were seeing everything that was happening, because not everybody sends a comment or a joke. So things spiral out of control in your head. And you also become your worst nightmare, because as you're reading this, you can continue to log into it, even a comment that's only said once, because if you look back to that definition, it's repeated over time, a bullying incident. But you might say something meanly once, but the person who's reading it is reading it over and over and over again. In 2010, Tyler did not have a smartphone, because if they were out, we didn't have one. We didn't afford it. We couldn't afford it with college and everything. But he did have a laptop, and there was Wi-Fi, but not everywhere on campus, because again, it was sort of the beginnings. So he, in the few hours that he had available to Wi-Fi and his laptop, in the midst of going to classes and making friends and going to like a Gay Straight Alliance organization on campus, which he did attend, and orchestra and rehearsal, he logged in about 60 times in a short 3-day period to those comments and jokes on forensic examination of his laptop, as well as he took screenshots and he had them saved on his computer. And he continually, they also did the timing, those posts were up on his screen for a lengthy amount of time. Matter of fact, the last thing he was looking at before he left for New York were those posts and comments and jokes. So they definitely bring you into a spiraling downward space. And we can't expect young people to not use the digital world. That's unrealistic. That's not where the future is. But we have to teach them how to manage the digital space and shut it down possibly for a short time so that they can get the help. Because there's one thing that we also learned is that it's a very isolating space. Even though there's thousands of millions of people there, it's a very isolating space, because usually the people that are in your life around you don't know what's happening on that screen. We didn't know, obviously we weren't still in the same physical space because he was away at on the campus at college. But it's still, even there are instances and people that I've talked with where they're upstairs in the bedroom and their parents are downstairs. You know, in the good old days when I got a phone call, my parents knew who exactly I was talking to, and they heard half the other side of the conversation because my phone was attached to a wall in the kitchen and I was standing there talking. And maybe there's not something to say about that. and they could see my expression, and they knew what I was experiencing, probably a lot better than what our young people are doing on their own individual cell phones. Any other comments, James, before we move on?
No, I think that's covered.
So I'm sure you're doing lots and lots of research, but we are partnering with AT&T, and we did do a poll. We did one in 2016 and one in 2018. One of the simple things that we learned, doesn't surprise you, 48% of New York City youth, teens had been targeted already in the digital space. 75% have at least known somebody else or witnessed somebody else being targeted. I've seen statistics that are so much more. I've seen, I think, Microsoft, sorry, is that okay? It has up to 65% have been targeted already. So it just points to the fact that it is a problem and we need to learn to address it.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So when we took a look at what happened to Tyler and kind of thinking about how we wanted to help other young people that are experiencing bullying or cyberbullying, we were trying to sort of understand the dynamic, because I think so much of the media narrative was like Tyler versus his roommate. Like, it was these two people that were involved, and somewhere between them this all happened. But when we actually went through the trial and heard all of the students that were in the dorms being called up as witnesses to this experience, and sort of realizing what actually did happen, it really wasn't just about Tyler and his roommate, or the bully and the victim, right? It was actually all of the other people that were in the dorm, people that were on Twitter, people that were sort of around and knew about this, or were directly or indirectly involved, that could have either reached out to Tyler to offer him support, or could have reached out to an authority figure like an RA or an adult of some kind on the campus to let someone know that this was happening. And instead, all of those students chose to remain silent and not reach out to Tyler. So we decided that kind of engaging those bystanders and letting them understand that if you've seen someone being harassed, someone being hurt, someone being isolated, that it's really important to reach out to that person, or reach out to an authority figure and bring an adult into the situation, which was our Turning Bystanders into Upstanders campaign.
Right, we wanted to turn passive bystanders into active upstanders. And we do, right now we are in the middle of a Million Upstander movement. We're trying to reach out and get 1 million people to sign our Upstander Pledge, which is on our website, by the way, www.tylerclementi.org, right? And we're about a quarter of the way. We're probably going to announce that we're a little above that, maybe at 270,000 or so next week. Stand by for the big note. But we still have a long way to go, so we really want to make sure everyone knows that it's important to change culture, that we need as many upstanders as we have. And as James started to talk about, there are 3 ways initially that we thought you could intervene. You could either interrupt the situation if you feel comfortable, never ever coming into harm's way, and we encourage youth not to come into harm's way, but to go to the second step, which is to report it to a trusted adult, because telling is not the same as tattling. If you have someone's welfare at heart, it's not about getting anyone in trouble. You need to report it. And in the workplace, it's the same thing. You need to report it to your supervisor, and if you don't get a response, keep bringing it up to the higher level and higher level. But I think the most important aspect of this is to reach out to the person being targeted, to make sure that they're safe, to make sure they know where their resources are, to make sure they know that you're there just as a friend. If that, sometimes that's all they need, is to know that that you're there. At the trial, everyone said, "Oh, we didn't see anything." Well, it was there in front of you, and it was running, so you had to see something. And even if they had said that to Tyler to put him at rest, something, you need to do something, and you need to intervene in some respect, for sure. And we even have a wonderful upstander frame for your social media if you want to pledge, and then you want to put that on your picture. I think that would be great. If you want to, you can see my picture, and I have that. I am an upstander, and it's rainbow for Pride Month. So just saying, just a little plug. But I think it's important to know that Bullying has been happening forever. Mean-spirited behavior has been happening forever. Just horrific, terrible things to people have been happening forever. This is Albert Einstein. He was talking during World War II about the world's a dangerous place, not because of the people who do evil, but of the people that do nothing about that evil. And it's very common to have a bystander effect. You know, the more people that see something happening, which speaks to the internet, if a lot of people see it, everyone's going to say, oh, somebody else is going to speak up. Someone else is going to do something. It's, you know, I'm just, that's out of my comfort zone. That's too much for me. So we really want to encourage you to you be the one to speak up. And also one of our other initiatives at the current moment is we believe our political leaders should also be upstanders and should make sure that they take our pledge. And we are reaching out to all the presidential candidates. So if anybody has any connections, we've reached out to about 7 of them. 2 of them are considering, and 1 has already signed. But we will not reveal that until all have at least responded to us, because we don't want to show partiality, because we are a nonprofit and we do not endorse candidates. But this isn't about endorsing. We're reaching out to everyone. Well, tell us why you can't be an upstander. That's my question to each and every candidate.
Sure. So we also have our Day One campaign, which is a short script that a person in authority can read, either a teacher, principal, somebody in a sports organization, a fraternity, a religious community, sort of explaining on day one of a new school year, new work environment, sort of how we are expected to behave respectfully towards others, and sort of setting the tone, which is also something that didn't really happen for Tyler at Rutgers, was sort of just explaining basic human decency and how we're going to treat each other with respect in this
Setting
space.
clear boundaries of what is and is not acceptable behavior. Having a leader stand up and say, no one here is going to be targeted or humiliated because of the color of their skin, or the language they speak at home, or where they come from, or their gender identity, or their sexual orientation, or whatever else makes them special and precious. But everyone here is going to be safe and protected. And I think that's an important message to speak to someone who isn't clear, doesn't have clear boundaries, but it's also a really important message as I look at things through Tyler's eyes, that isn't that a great message for that marginalized or stigmatized person to say that this is going to be a safe place for me, that I am going to be safe and protected, and that this leader is going to watch out for me. And of course, you need to do that as a leader, and sometimes you need to post it to make it known. And we have a little video that Megan Mullally has been kind enough to record for us.
I'm Megan Mullally. More than 3.2 million students are bullied each year, but that number doesn't even begin to account for the number of people who experience harassment outside of the classroom, like in the workplace, on a sports team, or online. Bullying, harassment, and humiliation leave painful physical and emotional scars, sometimes for life. They can lead to emotional distress, substance abuse, missing work and school, and suicide. We cannot wait another day to make a change. On day one, people in your community and across the United States should take matters into their own hands. The Day One campaign is an effective, simple, and free way to reduce bullying, harassment, and humiliation. It focuses schools, colleges, workplaces, athletic programs, and other environments on a targeted intervention during orientation. It requires a person in authority making a clear verbal statement about what behavior will and won't be tolerated, and getting confirmation from the audience that they understand. Day One leaders stand up and declare that cruelty, bullying, harassment, and humiliation are unacceptable. Simply register through our website, download the declaration, and bring it to your group. Campaign leaders will read the declaration to thousands of individuals across the country on their first day of school, work, practice, fraternity pledge program, or anywhere. Anyone who hears it then signs a pledge card committing themselves to being an upstander, someone who works to stop bullying by intervening or reporting the abuse. We'll gather stories from Day One campaign leaders and track how the program is helping participants. Responses can be recorded on the Day One video wall, a digital quilt of anti-bullying stories spanning the country and beyond. Join us by becoming an upstander and sharing your anti-bullying success stories with the hashtag Day One. Simple, effective, empowering. Day One, a project of the Tyler Clementi Foundation.
So we just have a few things on our website. We have this example of the 3 things that you can do to prevent bullying on day 1, and we have other resources on our website, and we just want to share that with you and let people know that any day can be day 1. It doesn't have to be the very first day. We target schools on the first day of school for sure, but they can do day 1 as a reminder, the first day they leave for vacation or the first day back they come back from vacation. It's about a repeated message in order to change culture. It's not about just a one-time magic wand. And there are many, also as a visual person, there are many important visual messages that I think schools need to put out there, maybe even workplaces need. I see lots of rainbow flags here, so that sends a very positive message to me. So this is also a way that schools can, and these are just a few examples of what schools have done after they've done our day 1, and we're just so proud that they do it, and they have a change in culture. And this is a tree with all these little leaves that tell you all the different things about the way you can support a friend who's being bullied, and being kind and being respectful. And I just love all these creative ideas out there. But what's most important, I think, is what we have to teach is empathy, because it's really simple. Is that a 9 or is that a 6? You know, I think it's the way you see things, and I think it's about teaching people to try to see things through somebody else's eyes. I think that is really, really important, and we cannot agree on everything all the time, but we have to do it respectfully, and we can't attack a person's character. What we have to do is discuss the issues, and sometimes agree to disagree on the issues, but not on someone's character. You cannot destroy someone's character. I think that is one of the most important things to remember, if anything, that you take away is to be kind and respectful and show compassion and not tear someone's character down. One of the things in the digital world, what I love to share with students especially, is that sometimes young people are doing 7 things all at once on the computer screen. They're sending out text messages, and they're writing IMs, and they're posting on social media, and they're not even thinking about what they're saying. And I like to say to take a break, take a breath, reread what you've written, and if that comment or post is encouraging someone and building them up, then please go ahead and send it. But if it's tearing someone's character down, then I really encourage them to rethink about it and rewrite it, maybe even discard it altogether. Matter of fact, we had she's now on our advisory council, but she was a junior board member. She was a high school student, and she created an app called Rethink. And what she had found is that if you download it, it identifies characters and words, and it actually just shoots a question back to the person saying, do you really want to send this? And her research on her app says that 95% of the people actually discard it, and they don't send them. Of course, they've already downloaded the app, so that means they're considerate people and they want to be kind, so that's kind of still the statistics, but I think most of us are. I think most of us are good, and most of us want to build others people up. And sometimes you don't even know, as you're sending out that joke that might be funny with tonal intonations and eye contact, but when it's written in the digital world, it's not, and the humor is lost, and we have to be careful of that. Not everyone understands that. Plus, there may be other people reading it if it's a group chat, and they don't understand your little nuance, and that's important too. What are the other people seeing around? So I do want to share just a little bit more about our foundation. So there is a Tyler Clementi Higher Education Anti-Harassment Act. It has been reintroduced and then reintroduced to every Congress since the fall of 2010, initially by Senator Frank Lautenberg. Most recently, it was reintroduced in this new Congress on May 15th, and it was introduced in the Senate by Senator Murray from Washington State and Senator Baldwin from Wisconsin, and in the House by Congressman Pocan from Wisconsin as well. But there is support for it, but we want to make sure it grows. It's about having policies in place on college campuses that receive federal funding to make sure that there are policies to prevent harassment, and also resources on those college campuses for those who have been harassed or bullied or intimidated. It has got listed protected classes on it, and that seems to be the holdup. People don't seem to care if people are targeted because of their race or their sexual orientation or their gender identity, and it can't seem to move through and get passed. But we are not giving up hope. Maybe it'll go through the House this time at least. We'll see. And one of our other initiatives is the True Faith Doesn't Bully, because I do believe that we need to go to the basic and to the root cause. And I think bullying is much more than just to youth in the classroom or on the playground. I do believe that it's through bodies of people, like through legislative inequalities, as well as through bullying from the pulpit. Because as a Christian, what breaks my heart is when people use scripture to teach misguidedly and have misguided traditions of dogma, bias, and discrimination that devalues the human spirit, and it really causes so much pain and despair. Faith was an important part of Tyler's story, and I think it added to his pain and turmoil as well. And we have to make sure everyone knows that being gay is not a sin, and that we are all perfectly created in God's image. And if you don't believe it, that's okay. But if you do want to believe it, that's where we're here for. And we do have one other really great gift to us, and that is a beautiful piece of music called Tyler's Suite. It was commissioned by the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus and 6 other gala choruses, including the New York City Gay Men's Chorus was one of those 6. This was the 5-year anniversary, so back in 2014 it premiered in San Francisco. It was originally organized by Stephen Schwartz, who had some of his other friends come together to each composer did a different movement. It started out as 6 movements and grew, and it's, I think, finished at 9 movements. And it is just gorgeous. And if you go to our website, you can listen to it because we have it on our website. And it was just recently sung in Ottawa, Canada for the Canadian premiere. I haven't added it up, but it's been performed maybe 20 or 30 times in those 5 years. Some of the choruses do it more than once. But what was really meaningful was when New York City Gay Men's Chorus wanted to do an outreach, they actually came to Ridgewood, New Jersey, and that was very sweet. And they sang Tyler's Suite. And then the following year after that, or 2 years after that, Ridgewood High School performed it with the help of Ramapo College, because apparently I'm not musical, but apparently it's a very difficult piece of music, but if you split and conquer it, it's doable. And in Ottawa, actually, 3 choruses came together. Harmonia, which is a community chorus, Tone Cluster, quite a queer chorus, I think it's all the name, and they brought in 40 high school students to sing with them as well, and they did a phenomenal job. It was about 130 choral people up there, and it was really beautiful. And I think that's where we have to go, is we have to change hearts and minds. And what better way than to really dig deep with music, because I think music really resonates deep within you and causes people to rethink some things in life, I think. Any other comments? So I do think that this quote from James Baldwin pretty much sums it up, that we can agree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my right to exist. And I think that about sums it up. I mean, I'm all for free speech, but you can't destroy and harm another person with your free speech. That's my thought. We have to learn to build bridges and be respectful. So I do want to close by telling you that we do have some volunteer options. I do want to just plug the foundation, the Tyler Clementi Foundation. We do have a wonderful event comes up every fall, October 23rd, our Upstander Legacy Celebration, and you're welcome to come and join us. We would love that. We also have a wonderful board, and I have one of our board members right here with us, Dan, who's also a Google employee, a Gagler. I think you've joined Gaggle too, right? But he's in San Francisco, but he's here today in New York, which isn't that wonderful and nice of him to come to New York for us. So yes, so we do have other volunteer opportunities. We also have, if you have younger friends that are in high school, we have a youth ambassador program, which is wonderful. It's by application, and you get tutored throughout the year And that's a wonderful opportunity. And we are having a newly formed young professional group. So if you're in that young professional group, please let us know. We'd love to have you join us. We actually have someone also that's a young professional and is helping us get started. Alex is here visiting with us. So let's come talk to me, come talk to Alex. We would love to have you part of the Tyler Clementi Foundation. We also have these wonderful, sorry for the people far away, but if you want, reach out to Becca and she'll get you a bracelet because they're gold. Use your imagination. I know you all have it. Gold for the golden rule. Do to others as you'd have them do to you. It's something Tyler didn't receive, but it's something we want to make sure everyone else does. So as you wear it and you think about Tyler, think about the human consequences and the humanity involved in your words and in your actions. And for you that are old school like me, we have some information. But you can go to our website. And also, always use social media wisely and for good, which means to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and go to our website, tylerclementi.org, and pledge to be an upstander. Because I think I have a room full of upstanders here. And who knows, maybe out there in the cyber world, maybe even more. And we'd love to hear from you. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah.
No?
Well, it's been really an honor to be here today. We're super excited about it.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.